Welcome to You Choose, a choose your own adventure style show through the whole CNCF landscape. And we're in chapter 4 now, which is observability. And we're chugging right along. We're halfway through. Maybe. I think we are.
Yeah, somewhere around half, yeah.
So we've talked about Kubernetes dashboards. We've talked about standards, open standards. We talked about logs, metrics, traces now, except not really logs. We talked about observability
about
pipelines.
Logs.
Yeah.
We mentioned logs in passing, but there is no... Actually, I was about to say there is no logging tool in the landscape. Those are the collectors, but there is no logging destination. There is nowhere to send them. Let's put it that way.
Yes, and the tools that used to collect only logs now collect all the kinds of telemetry data. So they're no longer just logging tools. So we talked about them last week.
Not all of them, but yes.
You're talking about FluentD?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, I'm not sure about FluentD, but there are many other projects that were initially about collecting logs, and they're still about collecting only logs, right? Not necessarily in the CNCF landscape.
Ah, got it. Yes, I'm scoping to CNCF. That's my world. Because of this show, I'm learning so much. So let's talk about last week. So this log collection, data collection, telemetry pipeline business was all last week. And so what is a telemetry pipeline?
It's a middleman between your applications or whichever sources you have of data and the destination, right? Hey, it's not enough to... We shouldn't be pushing stuff directly to wherever we're storing things. We shouldn't be pulling directly from our applications. We should put a middleman or a few of them, and then they will do the job for us.
Are you being sarcastic right now? Or are you
No, really. No.
Oh, okay. Why do we want a middle person?
I mean, it's not a person, it's a process, Whitney.
Okay. Well, it's not a
we
man
don't put
then
people
either.
in clusters. Come on. That's disrespectful.
Where's the middle process? So first of all, a pipeline, a telemetry pipeline, and I guess most pipelines, is a receiver, a processor, and an exporter. And then they can also be tiered. So you might have a collector send data to another collector before it gets routed to.
That's when one middleman is not enough. Now we're talking about government administration type of situation, right?
Actually, the Jaeger docs specifically say don't use a collector. Tiered collectors can mess up your tracing data. But why do you want collectors at all? Why don't you go straight from the source to the destination?
There could be different reasons without stating how justified they are or no. Hey, your application, if you want, for example, to change from Jaeger to Grafana Tempo, for example, tomorrow, you have two options. One is to change the address in your container or application, so whatever is sending the data, or to have those sources sent to a collector, and then from collector you can change the destination, right? So
as a workaround,
if everything is sending to the same destination, then you only have to change one place, right?
Yeah. So as a workaround for having to re-instrument your code at the source, you could instead implement a collector, a middleman.
Now,
yeah.
Let's be honest, it's not hard to change a single environment variable even in 1,000 applications, but yeah, that's the advantage. Now, here's the problem. What happens if you choose to change the collector? Then you're back at the square one.
Wait, what do you mean? I don't understand.
So one of the many reasons to use a collector is say, hey, this is the stable destination, and from there we're going to redirect wherever. And if we change from one tool to another, we're going to change the collector, right? And then you don't need to modify your application in any form of way, unless you change the collector where the application is pushing, and then
you need to change all your applications to push to that new collector, and then you just have the same problem but in a different place. Isn't that like the crux of technology altogether?
Exactly, kind of like. So all of us working in technology, we find ways to get you. Kind of like, you feel safe. You feel secure, but you're not.
It's never less complex. You just move the complexity from here to somewhere else. Yeah. So you could use a collector to like get rid of PII kind of data or drop filter data or drop data. But like to your point, you could also do all of that as part of your application instrumentation too.
Yeah. So it's more a question of where it's easier for you to deal with those things, right? One can argue that, hey, the source of the data should output what is needed instead of outputting garbage and then you filtering it somewhere else. On the other hand, you can say, hey, I cannot deal with thousands of applications and modifying them all the time to figure out what's needed, what's not needed. I have one place and that's easier. Depends how you look at it.
Makes sense. So then let's recap the 3 technologies that we learned about last week. It's what's different between FluentBit and OpenTelemetry Collector?
I mean, they all at the end implement OpenTelemetry. I mean, not all. Open Collector implements OpenTelemetry. FluentBit implements OpenTelemetry together with its own format. So
yeah. So when you say implements OpenTelemetry, you mean it uses the OTLP protocol?
Yeah, exactly.
I said protocol twice, but yeah. So they both are compatible with OpenTelemetry sources. So that's not a difference. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And FluentBit evolved from FluentD, and it was created to deal with logs, and then expanded to do all telemetry data. But it does it does its best work with logs. And then OpenTelemetry Collector was created for tracing. It came from the Open Tracing project, and then expanded to include all telemetry data. So it does well with tracing. I think they both do a decent job with metrics.
I think that's the story of many projects in general, including CNCF. It's kind of eventually
the
they all get to the same point.
Yeah.
Eventually, they might be starting from different points. They might be starting here and here, but give them enough time, they're going to end up in the same place.
The Venn diagrams will just be 2 circles completely on top of one another. So, but I do understand at least that FluentBit is more performant, which can matter if you're doing high volume. So it's written in C. You're
thought
making
that we
a
already
face.
established in the episodes before that also kind of everything is more performant than OTel agents, collectors, this or that.
I thought that my like super duper simplified, oversimplified, I'm sure, understanding is that FluentBit has an edge in terms of performance and processing, but then OpenTelemetry has like has the edge, not just the edge, but like amazingly huge and vibrant community. And
the scope is much bigger.
The scope is much bigger. So, and then there's a logging operator, and logging operator is meant to run on top of these projects. So logging operator was designed to run on top of FluentBit only, and it does 2 things. It gives an abstraction so that teams can more easily deal with logs, like just the logs that they care about and not the entire company's logs. And so it makes it easier for dev teams to deal with their own logs, and then it also provides isolation for their logs. And you can deal with problems like noisy neighbor and that sort of thing. So that's logging operator. But then our guest also talked about telemetry controller, which is very hard for my mind to separate between that and telemetry collector. I don't even know if I said it. Open telemetry collector versus telemetry controller. I'm confusing myself. So telemetry controller is the logging operator project that now does the logging operator multi-tenancy thing, but on top of either FluentBit or Vector or Open Telemetry Collector. Yeah. So that's what the third project is and what it does. And is there anything else you'd like to say about it? Shall we reveal the chosen technology, the winner of the vote last week?
No, let's do it. If I remember where I put it, it's somewhere. There we go. Here we go. Right, Open Telemetry.
Ba-ba-da-da. Speaking of that,
you need to say pa-pa-da-pa before it appears.
Yeah.
That's the rule with me. Yes.
Next time you can do the da-da-da-das.
I'm not doing da-da-da-da.
You just did it and telling me you're not going to do it. So
But with enthusiasm.
okay. So let's see the demo, Victor.
No demo. I have my home is like a leper colony. Everybody's sick or getting sick and stuff like that. So I did not prepare. I was planning. I was supposed to prepare earlier. I couldn't because of some other obligations. And then I thought, okay, I have few hours before this session to do it, and then all hell broke loose.
I'm
Not
sorry
happening.
to hear it. But you're not sick? You're okay?
I'm alive. Yes.
Yeah.
I consumed so many substances in my life that I think that all the germs are dying the moment they touch me. Kind of like, nothing
just
can
pure
survive
acid.
in this. Pure acid, exactly. Kind of like, I'm a medical enigma.
Well, much love to your family. And maybe we'll see it in future weeks. We'll see how it goes. So then let's move on to this week. So we're going to talk about progressive delivery.
Yay.
First things first. What is?
Oh, wait. Yay!
Was that with? Yeah, I was going to say, was
now
that with
trying to
enthusiasm?
Yeah, there we go.
What is progressive delivery?
I'll give you a couple of definitions. One interpretation of the official. It's about gradually rolling out your release for two reasons, at least two. One is to reduce the blast radius, right? If only 10% of my users can see the mess I made, it's better than everybody, right?
Which
And
really hits
give
home
you-
after this, after the CrowdStrike incident.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it gives you time while that is happening, while the process is ongoing, to check it out, right? Manually, automatically, in whichever way you want. And there are many variations of progressive delivery, rolling updates, canary deployments, blue-green, and probably a few others, right? And actually, everybody who ever used Kubernetes was most likely using progressive delivery without knowing.
Oh, but because Kubernetes has, as part of its native deployment mechanism, it does
When you
rollouts.
deploy a second release or modify your Kubernetes deployment, you're effectively executing rolling updates, which is a variation of progressive delivery, right?
Yeah.
It shuts down one pod, it creates a new one, and then it repeats until all the pods or replicas of your application are the new release and none of those of the old are running, right? It's the simplest one, and it's the one baked into Kubernetes. Not
So that's-
necessarily the one you should use, but that's always there. And also, every single person who uses managed Kubernetes cluster like EKS, AKS, GKE, whenever you upgraded your cluster, you were doing progressive delivery. You were doing rolling updates because that's baked into those services, right? Now, a more interesting definition to me, I'll give you two. One is that it is testing in production.
Okay.
That's how we test in production.
Getting
Right.
into chaos engineering style stuff.
No,
I'm here
not
for
chaos engineering. It's just the kind of, we are rolling gradually new release and we are testing whether it works or it doesn't. And depending on whether it works as expected or it doesn't, we choose to continue or to go back, right? That's testing essentially, right? And the last one I'll give you, unless you ask me for more, I have many, is that it is actionable observability.
All of this
Right.
stuff we're gathering, besides dashboards and queries, here's like another thing we can do with it.
Yeah, we can do something with those metrics other than watch them instead of YouTube or Netflix, right? Instead of staring at the dashboard, you can actually instruct your system what to do based on metrics.
So you can perform automations based on your observability data.
Absolutely, yes.
You're saying
should.
metrics. Is it metrics specifically, or is there a reason you'd use logs or traces or other telemetry data in this case?
I mean, in theory, you can create queries in either of the tools that we are going to see today that go to some destination, whatever it is, and query it for some data, and then depending on the outcome, decide what to do, right? In theory, that could be anything. It could be traces, it could be metrics, it could be logs. Now, in practice, most of the time, you want metrics, right? Because you cannot say, hey, you know what? If I find an error in logs, I'm going to abort, right? No, you're going to have a huge number of errors, right? Error messages and this or that. That's happening. So you need something more sophisticated or easier to deal with than logs, right? So metrics, most likely.
Right on. And so Kubernetes is already doing rolling updates for you. So
Yes.
why do we need these tools like rollouts and Flagger?
Oh, if I
Kubernetes
tell you,
already does
then
it.
I will.
I'll
Then
take
we
the
can
thunder,
just.
the
Can
wind
you
out of
kick
their
out?
sails.
Okay, let's do it. You kick those guests. You have the control, and then. Let's give
just
them
you
a
and me.
chance. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fair. But it sounds like what we're talking about is like querying. Like, I don't think Kubernetes can query metrics or any sort of observability solution and perform automated
Not in a
actions based
deployment
on what it
itself, but
learns.
Kubernetes is deciding whether to progress forward or back or to stop doing whatever it's doing based on the health checks. And you define what the health check is.
Okay.
So in theory, you can say, hey, /health is my health check, check it out. And whenever you query that endpoint, I'm going to, from my application, for example, query real metrics or this or that and return okay or not okay to you as well. You could do it. It would be silly of you to do it that way, but you could do it. It's doable.
Yeah. So do you think it's important at this point to talk about different deployment strategies like canary deployment or A/B deployment or blue-green deployment?
You want short or a long rant about it?
I want the long one. Give it to me, Victor.
A long one? Okay, kick out,
Yeah.
I guess. So, rolling updates, I'll do the short one. I'm going to be respectful.
I called your bluff.
Blue-green is about creating a replica of your production based on the new release. So you would have both of them running in parallel, and then at one moment you would switch to the new one.
Bam!
And bam, right? So the problem with that one is that when you switch to the new one, if it's a problematic one, everybody will be disappointed,
Okay.
right?
So you do have the risk of, But
Yeah.
but you're poised to roll it right back if it doesn't work too.
That's a tricky part because
Yeah.
of course you can roll back and you should, but the thing is that the whole idea behind blue-green was invented at a time when rolling back was very difficult. So you would literally run both of them in parallel and you just change the load balancer to go to the old one, right? Because going back to where you were was a complicated endeavor and it took time. Now
Yeah.
it's Kubernetes, it's kind of pim pam. I can roll back just by rolling forward to the previous release. I don't need it to run in parallel for really, but
Okay.
there we go, right?
Okay.
And Canary deployments is about gradually increasing the reach. Hey, 5% of you can see this thing, and I'm going to test it and observe what you're doing or whatever you're doing. And then if it's okay, go to 10%, 15, 20, whatever the percentages are until you say, okay, let's just roll completely to 100%. So basically, you're limiting the blast radius. You're testing, a fraction of your users are guinea pigs. Instead of everybody being a guinea pig.
What's AB deployment?
AB is basically it's in a way similar to Canary deployments, right? Is when you are, but it's more often implemented for new releases. So let's say that I want to change the color of the button from black to green or red, and I'm not sure which one, right? Which one is more appealing? This is one of the many use cases, by the way. And you say, I'm going to roll out both of them, and I'm going to give one color to 50%, another color, and I'm going to observe what they're doing and make a decision. Which one do they like more, right? Like Google is famously doing that all the time. And you don't know it, right? Because you see a new feature in Gmail or YouTube, and you say, hey, okay, we have a new feature, and you don't know that actually somebody else did not get that feature at all, or get a different version of it, and so on and so forth.
Excellent. So I think is there anything else we should say about progressive delivery before I guess we usually talk about what are we evaluating when we're looking at these tools? Like what should we be keeping in mind?
Whether they do a good job.
Where do they work?
Do they work?
I'm like
It's advertised.
I'm interested in learning the mechanisms. We talked about observability, but are there other mechanisms too that define success and rolling forward, and the mechanisms that define failure and rolling?
A bunch of people sitting in front of monitors and looking at it. There is also the third one. That's the number of support tickets you get from after you release something.
That's a real one. And then
It is.
I'm interested too in learning how these things relate to networking and service mesh, or whether they do. But it seems like routing is a big part of them.
Yes. Yes, you need. Actually, in retrospective, I think that we should have done this episode after the next one.
After
so
cost?
you can route. You can. There are three general. There are more, but three general ways how you can do progressive delivery. Three among many others, right? One is to control the number of pods. Hey, if there are 4 pods of the new release and 1 pod of the old, that means that 80% goes to the new one.
That's how Kubernetes does it natively. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. Then you can control it from ingress and say, hey, my Nginx or Contour or whatever you're using, I'm going to instruct it to send certain percentage here and certain percentage there, or you can do it on a lower level, on a service mesh level, and instruct Istio or Blinkerd or whatever you're using. Hey, send this much over here, send that much over there.
Yeah. So I'm interested in, maybe I'll learn more about how that works today as part of the presentation. And when it's good to do it at the service mesh level versus like the load balancer cloud level.
It's always better in a service mesh level if you ignore the complexities of running service mesh, yes. I just say
if you ignore the one really hard thing about service mesh, you should always use service mesh.
Exactly.
That's very helpful, Victor.
But
Thank
that's
you.
the story of Kubernetes as well, kind of like if you ignore that it's bloody hard, I think it's the best platform to run stuff.
That's awesome. Okay, let's meet our guests. First up, we're going to talk to Christian. So Christian, say hello to us. Tell us about yourself, please.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me back, by the way. So yeah, my name's Christian. For those of you who don't know me, I am head of community over at Acuity and a Argo project maintainer, open GitOps maintainer, overall awesome dude, guitar player, as you see. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll see your presentation here shortly. Oops, I cut him off
That's you.
I'm the worst.
Yeah. Don't let them speak. Why do we even invite them if you don't like them at all?
Clearly. Is progressive delivery related to GitOps? I'll save that question for the guests later. But like, you can't help but notice we're talking to Argo and Flux folks. Hello, Sanskar. Introduce yourself, please, and unmute yourself first.
I saw that as soon as I said hello. Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Sanskar. I'm a Flagger maintainer as well as a Flux project maintainer. I used to work back at Weaveworks when that was a thing. And currently I just maintain Flagger. And I like working on Flagger because it's a pretty awesome project. So yeah.
That's awesome. I can't wait to hear from you soon. So like GitOps and progressive delivery, I mean, they're both about deploying applications.
Save it
get
for Q&A.
Okay. It's a whole can of worms. All right, Christian, I hope you're ready. We're going to bring you on and start the time here pretty quickly. All right, let's hear about Argo rollouts.
All right. So I will start my own timer, but I assume I have less time than I think. So I'm here to talk about Argo Rollouts, a progressive delivery tool that was created at Intuit. They created a whole suite of tools in the Argo project. So, but I'm here to talk about Argo Rollouts and what is and how it enables progressive delivery. So Argo rollouts from really, really high level, again, because I only have 5 minutes, is a drop-in replacement for the deployment object in Kubernetes. It's meaning that we have the deployment object, and as you guys explained before, it really has only one type of update, and is the rolling update. And Argo rollouts was created to provide more granular progressive delivery and more options, like specifically blue, green, and canary update strategies, right? And so, since it's a drop-in replacement for deployments, it essentially creates and manages replica sets. And what it does is it ends up mutating things like services and ingresses to perform the update and to perform the traffic shaping, right? Traffic management. So it actually offloads that to whatever ingress or gateway provider that you have. So here are some of the here you can see some of the traffic providers that it supports. There's a big list of them, but kind of the popular ones, it would be like Istio, Linkerd, Trafic, Gateway API, kind of like a generic one as well. And it performs whatever you want, right? Either blue, green, or canary updates. When you're doing some of these updates, you can actually have it automated, either automated fail or automated rolling out based on metrics, right? As Victor was describing before. You can plug into metric providers and use any kind of pre and post sync kind of pre rollout and post rollout type of metrics checking, right? So Prometheus, Datadog, New Relic, whatever you want. You can just spin up a Kubernetes job and drop into Shell if you want to connect to the backend system. But essentially, you can perform an automated canary analysis, right, as it's going, right? So you can either do rolling out by percentage, do traffic mirroring, whatever your kind of traffic router supports and metric providers give you, Argo rollouts will make that decision, right? And so the rollout object, right, as I said, is a drop-in replacement, and it looks like a deployment because it actually takes in all the spec from the deployment, but adds a different this little strategy section where you can define your analysis, you can define the steps and how it rolls out. So I have about 2 minutes, so I'll try to do a quick demo. So I have this application here. So this kind of like, I'm going to do a standard canary, I'm going to throw in some yellow dots here. But as you can see, this version here has these blue dots. And if I go to my CLI here, I can see my rollout. And again, I'm going to fire off 10 replicas. It's going to have, first it's going to set the weight to 30%. I'm going to pause 10 seconds. I don't have an analysis here, but here's where the analysis would happen. Then I'll set the weight to 60%. Then I'll pause for 10 seconds, and then I'll set the weight for 100%. And I'm using Nginx to do the traffic routing here. So let's watch these. So here I have the 10 replicas here coming up on the stable of revision 1. I have a little a canary. Basically what I'm doing is I'm going to set the image to yellow. So let's do that. All right, image updated, and now you can see that the canary process is starting. I have about a minute left, so hopefully this will go smoothly. Here I have it's currently progressing. It's basically spinning up 30% here, and once this turns healthy, you should be able to see. There it goes. You should be able to see the yellow dots starting to appear. Right, it'll wait 10 seconds. At this point, you probably will have an analysis going through here, but then as you can see here, it's progressing because now it's spun up 60%, right? Spun up 6 pods. And as this is progressing, it's getting, it's progressing more and more onto the yellow. As you can see, the blue dots are disappearing and the yellow dots are slowly kind of taking over at that aspect here. And so now it's, as you can see, revision 2 is now healthy and up and running. It's now stable, but it kept kind of like the old replicas around for a while in case you want to do any testing or anything like that. But as you can see here, the dots are still going. Oh, and there it is at 100.
Oh, Victor, you're muted. I think he's shaking it.
Well, muted. Yes, you're done. You're done.
Yeah. I had my own timer, so.
That was a cool demo. Thank you, Christian. That was awesome. All right, let's learn about Flagger, Sandstar. And
Hello,
please
man.
just, yeah.
Let's go. I'm gonna also start my own timer. Let's go. Okay, cool. So hey everyone, Flagger is a progressive delivery tool for Kubernetes. So basically all the stuff that Christian talked about. So I'm not going to repeat that. You all know what progressive delivery is, why you need it. What Flagger gives you is a lot of extensibility, because you can run all sorts of webhooks during the canary process. So like you start the canary, you can call someone, hey, I'm starting the canary. You increment some weight. You can call someone, hey, I'm incrementing this weight to like 10% or 20%. You get done with the canary. You can tell someone, hey, I'm done. Either I rolled back or I was successful in promoting this application up to this new version, right? We also support all of the popular increases in service meshes, including Gateway API. I think almost all of them. I don't remember which ones exactly. There are a ton of them. I mean, CNCF is a big landscape, but yeah. Cool. So how do we do it, right? We have this object called the canary object. I'm going to dive into that just in some moments. But essentially what happens is that Flagger creates a replica, an exact replica of the deployment you're running, and we call it the primary deployment. And the deployment that you had initially was the canary deployment. And we spin up all sorts of services and networking configuration, which basically says that, hey, when you are stable and you're not deploying any releases, all traffic should go to the primary deployment here. And then when I'm in the middle of a canary rollout, configure the ingress or the service mesh or whatever to start sending some of the traffic to the canary service, right? So that way your Kubernetes deployments stay intact. No one messes with them. It just happens sort of transparently. You install Flagger, you install a custom resource, and boom, you're ready to, start doing canary releases. Right now we have Prometheus in this diagram, but we support like a ton of other metric providers like flux-cd and Graphite and whatnot. Right. We also have support for KDA. So if you have so instead of using like a standard HPA to manage your deployments, you use the KDA autoscaler. We also support that as well. So that's pretty seamless. So I'm going to go move forward with the demo and hopefully that will work. All right. So let's take a brief look at what a canary looks like. So let me know if the zoom level is good enough. Right. So this is a canary. We have a bunch of things, right? So we have this analysis section where you say, hey, run the analysis every 15 seconds. And you say that max rate is basically saying that, hey, once the traffic reaches 50%, I'm going to consider this release to be the best release in the world. So put all of your users right now on this release. Cool. So and these are some of the metrics you can query. So you can like define custom metrics and stuff, latency, success rate, error rate, stuff like that. Right. And then onto the webhooks where you can say, hey, run this webhook, before you roll out. So pre-rollout means before you start the rollout, and run this webhook during the rollout. So let's move forward with the demo. So I have, so if you see here, I have an application which is pod info on 6.0.2. I'm just going to bump that up to 6.0.3. Right. So that should kick off the entire canary process, as you can see here. I'm just going to wait for Flagger to pick it up. So it's every 15 seconds, it's going to use one. So let's see some pods get spun up, right? So it's spinning up the new pods, which are the canary pods, the one with 6.0.3 in it. And while we wait for that, we can look at our pod info website, right? And we can also see, I'm using Linkerd for this demo, by the way. So you can see some traffic is flowing right now to pod info primary and some traffic to pod info, right? So as you can see, slowly and slowly, some traffic is going to pod info, right? Which is the new one, right? And right now, like 25% of the weight is going to like the new one. And we're going to like wait for Flagger to do its magic. Slowly and slowly, RPS is increasing. If you click here, we're eventually going to see like a 6.0.3 come up, right? So if you ping here, right? Yep. Okay. Cool. So that worked, right? So as you can see, it went up to 50 and it said, hey, everything is perfect right now, right? So you can see the RPS dropping a little bit, right? It will eventually drop. The load test is still running, right? And what it essentially did was it copied over all of the new template spec that you had, which essentially had the new version as well, right? So if you see the primary version now is at 6.0.3. So you have successfully performed a canary release eventually by shifting traffic gradually over from the old one to the new one. And I think that is time.
That's
Excellent.
time. Yeah. Perfect.
Welcome, welcome. That was fantastic. Thanks to both of you. We did have some questions come across while y'all were talking, and I have questions
Nice.
always. But
Always.
if those of you who are watching, who are with us now, if you have questions, please do ask them, and we'll ask our guests. So this is a question for both of you, and I'm actually going to expand on this question a little bit too. So the question is, what if the app requires to run a job before the new deployment can be rolled out? And in general, I think my question is, can there be other things besides metrics that define success and mean that things should reach the next level of rollout? Let's start with Sanskar, please.
Yeah, sure. So with Flagger, right, we are very Kubernetes agnostic. So we don't like support like job specifically or some other custom resource that you might have that is like a equivalent of a job. What we have are webhooks, and you can see webhooks being defined at every level of the rollout. So before you start a rollout, before in the middle of a rollout, after you're done with the rollout. So to answer your question, if you wanted to run a job before your new deployment, you can have a service running which can accept those webhook requests and configure Flagger to say, hey, before you start this canary rollout, go just ask if this new service, if it's okay to start the rollout or not. And Flagger will not start the rollout until that service says it's okay. And that service can be in charge of running the job and doing all of that stuff. So we like to be very Kubernetes agnostic. In a way, like webhooks are very extensive. It can be Kubernetes, not Kubernetes, your wish.
Got it. And how about Christian for Argo rollouts?
Yeah, so Argo Rollouts has a concept of I said analysis, right? So when I was explaining about like the analysis and you can set up a metric provider, there's a generic job analysis that you can do. So so you can do things other than just check your metrics provider. You can like run a script or whatever. Then on top of that, there are what we call pre-promotion analysis and post-promotion analysis. So you can do a pre-promotion analysis where you can fire up a job if you'd like, a pod. And depending on the health of that, you can decide whether to roll forward with the rollout or not. So, to answer this, I guess Andy Kaufman's question here, it's possible to do some of these things. These are just common patterns that both tools address for sure.
Cool. And then you had to know this question was coming, Sanskar, but there we
I'll let
go.
him answer this one. Yeah.
Yeah. Is flux-flagger no longer popular after the Weaveworks closure? So is there support and new features for Flux and Flagger?
So, yeah, I mean, that's valid. I mean, Weaveworks is no longer in this world, sadly. So Flux is still going pretty strong. I mean, so there's a new company called Control Plane which has picked up support. A lot of the old maintainers who used to work at Weaveworks now work at Control Plane, and they're doing pretty good. They're adding tons of new features. Flagger as well. Flagger is not currently supported monetarily by any company. I don't believe so. So, but Stefan and I do work on it pretty much every week, and we are in the middle of actually rolling out a new release. So we keep adding features and bug fixes every now and then. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So does Flagger and Argo Rollouts support progressive deployment of CRDs? Christian, let's start with you.
So I hate answering this question because the answer for rollouts is yes. I do not recommend it. So there is support for it. I'm not a big fan of it. It's there's people that, because originally it was just a drop-in replacement for deployment. So then people's like, well, what about the stateful sets? Well, what about this? Well, what about that? What about XYZ? Right. So there is support in Argo rollouts to define what is it. I'm not a big fan of it, just because not a lot of people are doing it. It hasn't really been battle tested. However, it is supported, 100% supported. The short answer is yes. You can do other Kubernetes objects.
One note only, mostly because I was burned with it in a couple of cases. Your CRDs or CRs, need to support certain things. I believe it's state. I'm not sure what. I think that it needs to have a reference to the number of replicas or something like that. So it cannot be. It can be only CRs that can be controlled somehow, right? So it cannot be literally any. It needs to support certain things,
yeah.
but I just don't remember what exact specs are required.
And Sanskar, what about Flagger?
No, it only supports deployments.
All right. That's a nice, fast answer.
Yeah.
Excellent. And so I want to ask personally, I'm curious about how this all relates to GitOps. Like, especially, it almost seems like it works against GitOps, because if you have your desired state defined in Git, and now we're doing automated rollouts, that actual state is changing. And then why isn't Git like fighting it and trying to get back to the state that's defined in Git? Let's start with Sanskar.
Maybe just before anybody, just to put your question on a potentially better ground, right?
Okay,
you're asking
please.
with or without progressive delivery, or Argo rollouts and Flagger, right? Because what you just described is happening with deployments, is happening with horizontal pod autoscaler,
Yeah.
and quite a few other things. Cool.
Yeah. That's and so how does progressive delivery at all, let alone these tools and things like horizontal pod autoscaler work that are trying to change the state based? How does that work with GitOps?
Yeah, so like as Victor said, right? Like, I mean, it's happening before progressive delivery as well. HPA does basically the same thing, right? It changes deployment configuration, and that's something else. Like that's not defined in your Git repository, right?
Yeah.
So basically, so the way Flagger does it is that you track your canary resource, right, and not the deployment. You track the canary resource, and since the new resource, the new canary deployment that Flagger creates and the services that Flagger creates are owned by Flagger, they don't need to go in Git. You delete, you change something, you want to change something in the service, you change something in the canary, which is in the Git repository. You want to delete it, you delete the canary, which is in the Git repository. You never touch those. You never commit the YAML for those new deployments and services to Git, because as you said, it will all get rolled back. So there's no point.
Yeah. And Christian, is Argo rollouts the same?
So the way Argo rollouts works is that you can use Argo rollouts standalone, right? And that's basically what I did during the demo. Is I use this standalone. So what you end up doing is that you tell the rollout, hey, this is the new version of the image. Roll this out safely for me. So that can either be me doing a kubectl patch, or it can be a Git commit. So now this is kind of like where GitOps comes into play, where even though I'm using Argo rollouts standalone, it integrates with Argo CD. So what ends up happening is that you say, hey, I want a new version to be rolled out. Argo rollouts will then tell Argo CD to pause, be like, okay, there's a rollout happening. I want you to pause reconciliation for me. So it'll pause reconciliation and it'll do the work it needs to do. And if it's successful, it enables reconciliation. But by that time, it's already in Git, right? And if a rollout fails for whatever reason, it basically tells Argo CD to mark that application as degraded. And so there's a tight integration there between Argo CD and Argo rollouts that you can use. So whether you're driving it via like kubectl, right, via imperative tasks, you can still use Argo rollouts. That's fine, but you can also use GitOps. But there's tight integration between Argo rollouts and Argo CDs because it's part of the same ecosystem.
So there's never a reason you'd use, if you're using Argo CD, that you'd use Flagger for your progressive delivery, vice versa.
I mean, you can.
Yeah.
They're not. You don't. They're not like mutually exclusive. You can, for whatever reason, but there's tighter integration with rollouts. So
just like Flagger is built in a way to work with any GitOps tool. So like they don't really, Flagger does not really care what GitOps tool you're using Flux, Argo rollouts. It's built in a way that, you can use whatever you want. There is no tight coupling between Flux and Flagger, so to speak. But like the whole project was designed like GitOps is one thing, progressivity is one thing. Let's not couple them together.
That's great. We have another question in regard to building an IDP, so a platform. One using Argo CD as GitOps tool. would it bring benefits using Argo rollouts instead of Flagger, or is the configuration overhead not relevant? Is that a little bit what we were just talking about? The
Yeah, I think
tools are-
yeah. Well, further down, he actually said it answers what you said. Answers my question above. So
Okay, excellent.
so we did.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. And then would progressive delivery of CRDs fall more under GitOps? So
Yeah, I don't know. This is a complicated question.
I mean, the word says it all, right? It's about progressive delivery. And this is nothing to do with whether it's Argo CD or Flux, right? Those tools are synchronizing Git with your Kubernetes cluster. And progressive delivery is about what is happening once it's inside, right? How do I move forward?
then we have a question for
Sorry,
since
maybe you can better answer. So
Yes.
we have a question for Sanskar, but I need okay. Sanskar, do you think a middle out strategy is something Flagger can handle? But first, please tell me what a middle out strategy is.
I don't know what is the middle out strategy. Maybe I can Google it.
Oh,
I don't know.
I think it looks like Victor's on it. Victor's going to
Yeah.
Google it. I have a question in the meantime. So we've been talking about using metrics as a way to decide when to keep rolling out. It helps me to have concrete examples. Like, what's a concrete example of some success criteria that you might use to say, okay, let's send more traffic to our Canary deployment? Are all three of you literally Googling this right now? Nobody's paying attention to me? I think so.
All right. So correct. What's the
Rude,
question?
you guys.
Yeah. I was gonna say I think this is a troll because I think it's or a joke because middle out is from a television show. So yeah.
From a
I found
Well,
something
rude.
related to Agile, but couldn't figure out what it is. So I gave up.
can't
But
believe you.
Shubham or whatever the name is, if you can explain what it is, then we can do our best to answer.
It's a crypto thing. Yeah. No, that's all.
My question was to have a specific, like, concrete example of some success metrics that might be used to graduate to the deployment to further steps. Like, you say metrics can be used, you say jobs can be used, but can you paint me a picture of what that really looks like? Christian, we'll start with you.
So with respect to like making decisions on whether to roll out like more and more, like
Yeah.
like how
Yeah.
So
What defines success to roll out some more traffic?
I'll throw it back to you. It's whatever you want it to be. Honestly,
But-
like it is. So it's like, so when you that would depend on app from app, right? And so so you would write a query to, let's say, Prometheus, right, and say like, hey, if I'm getting 500s, if I get more than 10%, 500 errors, let's start rolling this back. There's an issue there. If you but you can run things in parallel, right? And then do the calculation after, right? So you can say, hey, if I run this database query and if it's slower than X, then there's something wrong, right? Or if I'm not getting the right data back, or so the it depends. It goes from application to application, right? It depends what is success, right? It'll depend on the app that you're running. Very simple tests would be to see if you're getting 500s. More complex tests would be like if this specific user isn't coming up from like the database or like a specific value, you can have and you can mix and match. So I'm sure Flagger has something around that as well.
Pretty much what Christian said.
One way you can get started with that is just ask yourself, if I don't have progressive delivery and I'm watching metrics, some dashboards in production to deduce whether something is working or no, and everybody's doing that, that's your starting point, right? Whatever you're watching in production to see whether it's working, those are your queries, or at least beginning of them.
That's cool. We have an opinion that I want to see if y'all agreed with. Argo CD, and maybe I will say all of GitOps, should be used more for infra tools and not for applications themselves. Oh, Victor, you're making a face.
No, just trying to understand the question.
What if we have thousands of apps?
Yeah, that's I think Gerald answered it actually pretty. I mean, it is you can use either tool for for applications. For infra, the idea is managing your resources like with GitOps, right? In Git. So it's and you're integrating these other tools with it. I don't. Yeah, it's just strange comment.
One way. Sorry, I'm interrupting all the time, but I like this subject. Anyways, one way you can look at it is don't think about it as if it's managing applications or infra or whatever. It's managing Kubernetes resources, whatever they are, right? If that's your load egress with a load balancer that will be spin up from it, that's what it's managing, right? It's managing Kubernetes resources.
So how do these two tools use experiments? Is that another way to deliver progressively? What's an experiment in this context?
Yeah. So so for Argo rollouts, experiments is a CRD that you can use to run ephemeral like replica sets, right? To run experiments like against like a version or specific version of an application, right? And so it can be used in conjunction with analysis as well. So like if you want to just run some experiments on these ephemeral pods to kind of just spot check some things, you can use that. So it's a CRD. It's like another CRD like that Argo rollouts, at least specifically for Argo rollouts, provides to be able to like run some of these ephemeral versions of your application.
Cool. And then we have a question. Let's start with Sanskar for this one. How would Flagger work with Helm deployment updates?
Flagger would work exactly the same way if you do a Helm deploy or a kubectl apply or a git push. Something changed and it's gonna go do a canary rollout. It doesn't matter what the CD pipeline looks like, or is it a declarative update or an imperative update. That doesn't matter. All it cares about is what is there in your cluster right now.
Excellent. And what about for Argo rollouts?
Yeah, so it's the same thing, right? So like if you are you're rolling out specific versions, I think Argo rollouts focuses mainly on images, but image updates, that is really what it's focused on. If you're trying to roll out like other versions of other things, you can use workload ref, but that's really more like on the GitOps side. But yeah, so if we're just sticking with like image updates and rolling those out, just like Flagger, it works the exact same way, whether you're using customized Helm. The functionality is the same.
What if you're not doing progressive delivery, or maybe you are doing just with the native Kubernetes? You're not deliberately doing progressive delivery, and you want to start. Is it an involved process to start using progressive delivery from nothing? Let's start with you, Sanskar.
No, not at all. I mean, as I said, right? Like for Flagger, you install Flagger, and I mean, assuming you have a service mesh or something that can, do some sort of weighted routing, ingress, or whatever that is.
Okay.
You just install Flagger, you create a custom resource for your deployment, and yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have an observability stack set up, then you just need to write some queries. Your basically your SLIs that you want to confirm that are being upheld by this new version of your deployment. Yeah, and you're off to the races. Like there's nothing else to do. Flagger does it all automatically.
Nice. And is the same similar for Argo rollouts?
Yeah, so like I would say that like if you're starting from nothing, the very, very most simplistic thing you can do is blue-green deployment, right? You spin up another version and then you tell Argo rollouts to point to there, and there you have it, right? Like and that's very, very easy to get started. You can do it like by itself, right? Without Argo CD or anything else. So yeah, it's the exact same.
Excellent. That's all the questions from chat. So let's go ahead and say our closing statements. Christian, why should folks vote for Argo rollouts?
Argo rollouts. So Argo rollouts is integrated with the Argo project suite of tools. So if you're already using like Argo CD or Argo events, Argo rollouts is the natural next tool to use. as well. You can use it standalone as well. Like, so if you don't even want to do GitOps, you can do that as well. And also, because I had my demo had cool little dots flashing, so I think that's what.
That's a good reason. All right. Thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise. Bye, Christian.
All right. Bye. Thank you.
All right, Sanskar, why should folks vote for Flagger?
Because it's really extensive. You can get started pretty easily. And I mean, unlike Argo Rollouts, is very loosely coupled with any other tool. So there's no vendor lock-in, so to say. I mean, tool lock-in, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, so you can like use it with any other GitOps tool you want to. It's very transparent in the way it does things. It has a ton of customization features, supports pretty much every ingress service mesh provider, metrics provider, auto scaling provider. So yeah, and I don't know if my demo was as cool as Christian's, but it had a cuttlefish, which is pretty cool and cute. So yeah.
Cuttlefish. Great. Thank you so much. And then there were two.
Yeah.
What do you think, Victor?
It's awesome. I love progressive delivery.
Yeah, it's cool. So please, everyone, vote. Our voting is in the CNCF workspace, in the Slack workspace, in the You Choose channel. And so the voting is going live right at the top of the hour. So the poll will go up at in 4 minutes. And make your voice heard. The poll's open for 3 days, and we'll be on Friday. We'll have a chosen technology, and if Victor's family is doing well, we'll have a demo in our next episode. All right, I think that's a wrap, Victor. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
I think that's it.
Thanks, everyone,
Do
for
it.
watching.
Use it.